Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about transit Mercury making a square opposition or inconjunct aspect to one's natal moon. Now, when we're talking about transits that involve Mercury, they can be about communications, assimilating information, mobility, siblings, cousins, neighbors, analysis. And the thing is, when you have the transit of Mercury basically making an adverse aspect to your natal moon, well, this may manifest in communications, assimilating information, mobility, siblings, cousins, neighbors, analysis. May conflict with your emotions, your emotional needs. It can be a time where it might be a little bit harder to think rationally because emotions may be conflicting with it at this time. And keep in mind, this transit it doesn't last very long. I mean, if the thing about it is, though, it still can. You're going to have a number of them per year. I mean, you're going to have like 2 squares anyway uh, per year of transit Mercury to your natal moon. You'll have an opposition, 2 inconjunct aspects anyway. You might have more in some cases when Mercury is transiting retrograde. But the thing about it is, though, when you have this transit again, it's not overly significant. I don't think because it doesn't last very long, but you do get a number of them, and it can have some significance. The transit does last longer than the transits of the moon, of course. I mean, this is for days. You'll have this transit, and this is still something which could have a little bit longer impact than moon transits. Now, the thing about this is, it could also be that your communications, or it might be news you might receive, may conflict with your emotional needs. I mean, it might be something where, I mean, if you have like Pisces, transit Mercury is in Pisces, and say your natal moon is in Gemini, it might be news regarding maybe you need to relax a little bit more and do some meditation and actually be a little bit more stagnant. And it might be, whether it might be some health reasons or what have you. And of course, the natal moon in Gemini could be very restless, and on a subconscious level, you might be, and really like, being mobile and moving around a lot. And the thing is, another thing too is that keep in mind the moon is connected with our reactions and our responses. And the thing about this transit is, it can be sometimes what you're thinking and how you're responding. They may be adverse to it. They might be in conflict at this time. You might be responding a certain way, but it might not be coinciding, with what's going on, mentally, what you're actually thinking. If say let's say we have transit Mercury in Sagittarius, and it's opposing going back to the natal moon in Gemini as another example. It could be that you're really thinking more about being blunt regarding something, maybe almost to the point of demoralizing somebody. And the moon in Gemini may be more inclined to just say, what the person react in a way where so the person can hear what they want to hear, and not what really is the truth and needs to be said in some cases. Now, also, the moon is connected with the mother, the home, the family, people you're close to home with, women, prominent females in your life scheme. And it can be a time where these communications with these people might be harder to come by. Maybe these people aren't really, they're not around, whether it's in a figurative or a literal sense. You might not be getting, as far as your communications in general, you might not be getting what you call a lot of nurturing in communications and caring communications. People, maybe they seem like they're a little bit aloof at this time, and you're not really getting the support you need in matters connecting with your conversations, what you're saying to other people, your communications in general. Um, it can be a time too. I mean, when you look at the moon, okay, anatomically speaking, it's connected with the stomach, the breast, the chest, water retention. So The thing about this transit is it might be harder, perhaps, to articulate these matters if you do have any issues with what I described as anatomically corresponds with the moon in astrology. These issues may be a little bit harder to verbalize at this time, more so than usual, and it can be, or maybe you just don't want to talk about them, and it might even be affecting your rational thinking at this time. And say if the natal moon is in Aquarius, it might be issues with the stomach, the chest, the breast area. It might be intermittent pain, or sporadic or erratic pain. You might be getting some tingling. It might be a nerve related issue or some spasms in one of those places I just described anatomically. Another thing too is that, keep in mind, the moon is associated with our past and our memories. So it might be a time where you just don't really feel like delving or going into your past at this time. It might be something, or it could simply be that maybe something with the past is conflicting you with your day-to-day communications. You might be reminiscing about something, maybe some negative memories that might be not be really, but it may conflict. What you're trying to do. It could be, as far as Mercury goes, whether it might be writing or speaking with somebody, mental tasks in general. Say if the transit Mercury is in Scorpio as an example, it might be something with locksmithing you're trying to figure out. Maybe there's some other complex problem. Maybe you're trying to figure out a virus on a computer or something, or maybe it is something that might be somewhat complex in general. Um, it can be a time to remember that the moon is also associated with our unconscious. So it can be something that might be going on subconsciously that might be impacting your communications at this time. It can be, the moon is also connected with the public. So you might really not feel like speaking to the public at this time, or going out with your communications. Maybe your communications are more what I would call maybe introverted communications. They may be more homebound than usual. You might be dealing at this time, and there might be some news that might be emotionally upsetting to you at this time that you may receive. It could be something that somebody may have written. It could be something somebody directly communicated to you. Now, another thing too is that when you look at this transit, okay, another way this can manifest and pan out, it could be that neighbors, cousins, siblings may be averse, maybe to something in your unconscious or your emotional needs. Now, say if you're going back to Gemini again, say if the natal moon is in Gemini, maybe there's some unconscious tendency toward vicariousness, mimicry, being contradictory, overly mercurial. Um, it can be just something, it could be a situation too when you have this transit. Another way that this may be expressed, it could be that local transportation issues may give you some trouble in getting what you need. The moon, of course, is about our emotional needs. Mercury can be connected with local transportation. Now, say for example, if the natal moon is in Aquarius, and maybe those emotional needs, things you need, might be connected with astrology, astronomy, computers, electronics. It could be new technology, innovative items, anything that could be Aquarius related. It might be electrical components if you're doing some wiring in your home, as an example. Now, another thing too, it might be harder for you to understand perhaps your own emotional responses at this time. Remember, Mercury is connected with comprehension, understanding. The moon is associated with our emotional responses. Now, if the moon is in Aries, as an example, natal moon in Aries, it could be very acrimonious or angry responses. Maybe you're having trouble understanding why maybe you even responded angrily or abruptly to something. Maybe it was an impulse. Aries could be very impulsive and impetuous. It could be a very impulsive response that you don't even understand why you responded that way to something. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, now another thing too is that another way this may manifest this transit is that it could be news that may be received may adversely affect your safety and security. Now, say for example, if the transit Mercury is in Scorpio in the 12th house in your natal chart. Now, it could be over a stalker. Maybe I would say Scorpio can be connected with stalkers. One that stays very hidden. The 12th house is the hidden, might be somebody that's very elusive and hard to catch. Um, and also, too, in some isolated cases, there may be some issues with the arms, the hands, the nerves, breathing, lungs, even eyesight. That's all associated with Mercury. And they might cause more emotional upsetment, more so than usual. Gemini, as far as Mercury, you know, being eyesight, Gemini might be double vision, or there can be Pisces can be very blurred, nebulous, I would say unclear vision as another example. Aries might be something that might be very fiery or like a burning sensation, in an eye, or both. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying, stay well.